What is it about rich, up-their-own-arse college kids that make them think they know everything already? Do you think it's some kind of Dunning-Kruger effect? Either way, here's another retard who's going to teach us all about his flawed logic.
Hey, so I made a Facebook post the other day saying that it doesn't make sense to me how people can say they don't have time for political correctness, because that just sounds like I don't have time to think about what I'm saying.
I think what you meant to say is that's how it sounds to you. I do have time to think about what I'm saying, but I shouldn't then have to take more time to make sure I'm using the right version of the word I'm attempting to convey. Because you're the one with the problem here. You can avoid me instead of me changing my behaviour to accommodate you.
And how that's just a really strange political strategy.
Well, lucky for me, going about my daily life doesn't involve thinking about political strategies while I'm buying biscuits from the local co-op.
And I didn't expect it to be controversial, and for the most part people were agreeing with me.
Really? The whipped liberal morons you surround yourself with to form an echo chamber all agree with you? Well, gee whiz, mister.
But not everybody.
Oh, someone disagreed with you? You're lucky you didn't get PTSD.
One person in particular accused me of dealing with class warfare and ignoring commonly used words for things that already exist, and asked me what makes these people so special that they get to come up with these words.
That's actually an excellent point. What gives you the right or the authority to change a language that's much older and much more valuable than you will ever be? It's not just simply how we communicate our ideas, it's a testament to humanity. Tracking back how we got the words we use today is like a walk through history and culture, which is two things you people are always obsessing about. Oh, I guess, unless it's white culture. With this in mind, I would rather use the words that found genius, unique, and inspiring ways to work their way into our language, and not the words that a few snot-nosed rich kids thought up to feel morally and intellectually superior.
That there are way too many of to learn, and are just perverting the language to their own ends.
Yes, you absolutely are, and I know exactly why you're doing it. You want a false sense of intellectual superiority to your academic peers at university. You can't compete with them fairly, so you make a bunch of shit up that doesn't matter, and then memorize it. And then somebody who has actually got a brain in their head uses the term black instead of person of colour. You and your liberal arts friends and gender studies friends can all laugh behind the backs of your hands because that idiot got it wrong. It's exactly the same dynamic between modern art and art that's actually good.
So let's break those down one by one.
You just triggered every viewer with no hands. I hope you're happy with yourself.
Shall we? First, it's really telling that this person wanted to talk about these terms removed from any discussion of oppression.
You mean he wants to talk about facts and deal with someone offering a logical, constructed argument, not a hypersensitive crybaby crying about feelings? Also, based on what he said, no, he didn't say that at all. He was simply talking about the language of it, people policing language. But it's interesting to see that that's where your mind goes. Perhaps because you feel without this overly emotional interpretation, you have no case?
That minorities and women face.
Like?
Because when you remove the context of oppression,
then it seems like a bunch of oversensitive idiots crying about nothing?
Yeah.
I wonder the fuck why that is.
It does sound really strange to have these different terms, because what they're reacting to is oppression.
Can't use this reason unless you're going to offer me some kind of tangible proof or evidence of oppression faced by these groups in the Western world. And how is me calling a black guy black going to insult somebody who's never before in their life been a slave? And why is it absolutely fine for everybody to point out that I'm white instead of a person with no colour? Not as white as you, granted, but you look like you've been dead for a few weeks. But you get my point.
But explaining the axes of oppression is just going to take way too long for this one video.
Oh, how extremely convenient for you.
So we're just going to move on and assume that we all believe that people are treated differently when they're different.
Well, personally, I don't treat people differently, but if you do, I can't help that. Also, note how he said, assume we all believe. And as we all know, belief means there's no proof.
And it's why I'm not entirely on board with this argument that there are just some commonly understood words for these things, and we should use the words that everybody else uses.
That is one of the bedrock elements of society, being able to communicate effectively. God, I'd love to see you go into the army and get deployed. Sir, there are two persons of colour approaching my position. I don't want to stereotype by race, so I assume the bulge onto that Muslim man's thob is a basket of puppies.
Because Part of the common understanding of these words is a value judgment placed on these people.
That is absolute crap. Simply calling someone black, for example, is not judging their value as a person. For example, I would value almost any black person over you, because there's a very good chance they'll have something more to contribute to society than you, with your pathetically overdone hipster edgelord look, toothpick arms being about as useful as a stormtrooper's armour.
So hi, I'm white. No, it's quite a shock.
Yeah, no kidding. You're whiter than Alex Jones's ass. So why don't you stop white-splaining or mansplaining or whatever you retards call it? Get the minorities to tell us themselves.
I was also raised in very white communities, which I know is so statistically rare for white people to be around other white people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not like there's just under 200 million white people, not including Hispanics.
And I was raised learning a lot of these words and absorbing their connotations.
Alright, let's say you don't absorb all of this information while you're growing up. Congratulations, you never learned to speak, dress yourself, feed yourself, or learn about the world around you. Would be an improvement if I'm honest, at least you wouldn't be able to spread your overly liberal bullshit.
Unconsciously, but I still have to admit that that had an effect on me. And even if I didn't actively hate these other groups of people, I was still learning not to like them or respect them.
Well, it sounds to me like your parents are racist, horrible monsters. Congratulations on assassinating the character on the very people most likely paying for what I laughingly have to call your education.
Sure, I was taught that it was bad to be racist and to respect Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, but I was also still quietly taught to hate rap music.
Yeah, that's a thing called personal preference. I don't personally like rap music. Does that make me racist? Well, most likely not, as I don't actively listen to any kind of music. So, by that logic, I just hate every culture on the earth, including my own.
And that sagging my pants is bad.
Well, do you want to walk around looking like you've crapped yourself? And calling that a cultural thing is racist in itself. Came around from US prisons. So in essence, you're saying if a white person goes to prison, that's appropriating black culture.
And that I shouldn't wear blue or red because those are gang colors.
You said you grew up in very white communities. So if you're getting advice on how to avoid local gang culture, why would that be racist? Unless you're implying, of course, that only minority groups are in gangs. So, which is it? Are you an idiot, or are you racist?
And all of this stuff does seep into your psyche, and you start to learn that all of these signs of blackness or womanhood or any other group that you can think of are bad things.
Any group I can think of. Oh, I've got one. White people. I mean, something's obviously seeped into your brain to make you think white people are the faceless corporate monsters you paint us all to be.
And everyone just kind of nods silently in agreement when you use these words like thug or welfare queen, and people will deny that these are racially coded, even though they're only ever used to describe black people, and not only that, but black people that we don't like.
You are an absolute fucking moron. You think words are racial? Like everyday words like thug. I use the word thug to describe a thug of any race. So what you're saying is only black people can be thugs and whites are above that kind of thing? Good job.
So when you say that a word is purely descriptive and that it's not racially coded at all, you're literally just denying the truth.
And now you're inventing a context which doesn't exist. It may have been associated with the demographic that commits more crimes, but it's not exclusively for them. To claim it does just makes you look like more of a moron than you already do, and believe me, you do not need the help.
So when a person from those groups gives you a new word that they prefer that doesn't have those connotations, it's just a sign of good faith and respect to use it.
It isn't somebody from that group though, it's you, the whitest bastard on the planet. And quite frankly, if somebody starts demanding I change the things that I say, rather than simply not listening to what I have to say, then frankly they deserve none of my respect anyway, so the problem solves itself.
And by that same token, continuing in the face of that request to use the other word is not only invalidating and disrespectful, it's implying now that you know this new word, that you prefer the status quo where these oppressive structures exist.
Well no, because there is no constructed system of oppression. I can claim that without evidence because you claimed there is without evidence. You see how this works? I choose to use words I actually know, like salubrious and indubitably. I will not, however, use people's made-up words when there are perfectly good actual words to use.
And I do understand that there are a whole bunch of words that you have to learn, but let me take you back a few centuries to this man called Carl Linnaeus, who developed the system of taxonomy that we still use today. He decided that in order to categorize all living things on Earth, we needed to have 3 kingdoms: animal, vegetable, and mineral.
Gee whiz, you make learning so much fun.
We now have 6 kingdoms in our system of taxonomy, not to mention all of the new species that we discover that get their own branch of that tree. And when we discover a new species, we don't get these opinion pieces about how there are already too many species and we need to try to fit this into one that already exists.
Yeah, that's because they were newly discovered. They didn't have names yet at all, but you know what would be really stupid? If a bunch of idiotic college kids thought they knew better than every English speaker throughout history and attempted to change the language to make new names for things that already had names just because. Now that would be stupid.
It can't fit into another species category because it's different.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So what you mean is that black people aren't actually people, and they need to have their own word in case people accidentally mistake them for human. I'm not really comfortable talking to you anymore.
These words to describe gender and sexuality and race are being created by scholars to try to describe specific identities that people have and how these identities differ from other ones.
You're not talking about creating separate words for different types of people. You're talking about creating new words to replace old, perfectly good words. And those words don't need replacing. So to present it in that context is just dishonest.
And sometimes definitions change with new developments, just like Pluto is no longer considered a planet because it doesn't exactly fit into that category the way that scientists have decided.
No, you're wrong. Male. How specific, right? Because male obviously applies to only a very slim demographic. Fucking idiot. Asian, very specific again, you know, every single person on the Asian continent. Yeah, but this guy obviously knows better than history's greatest scholars. I mean, just look at the size of his glasses.
Bisexuality isn't necessarily attraction to only cis men and only cis women, because gender is a spectrum.
No, gender is pretty straightforward. Any deviation has its own word. It's called a fetish, or, in some cases, a disorder.
Bisexuality is attraction to 2 or more genders.
Oh, fuck's sake, I am sick to fuck at you. I'm at that point where I would not even piss on you if you were on fire. I'd just sip on a glass of water and know I was doing the world a service.
And even if you don't like the grammatical relationship between the prefix and that definition, it's not your decision to make because it's this person's way of describing themselves to you.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, until they expect me to refer to them as that term, because that's not their decision to make.
You should take the way someone describes themselves at face value and respect that.
What if somebody suffers from crippling depression and describes themselves as not worth anything? Just respect their decision. Don't worry, Sally, you really are worth nothing, you waste of skin.
Jenny is a Beatles fan. Marcia is an athlete. Kelly is demisexual. It shouldn't be hard.
Kelly is an attention-seeking retard. And don't try and stifle my sense of self-expression.
This idea that we have to maintain the purity of the language over everything else doesn't really hold water in my book.
Well, you see, that's the beauty of the world we live in. I don't have to give a fuck about what holds water for you or not. And that is the essence of freedom. There is more to this video, but quite frankly, I'm tired of looking at him. And I just can't bear to watch any more of his moronic attempts to make himself look slightly less stupid than he actually is. So, lovely viewers, what interesting genders can you invent that this guy will have to call you by his own moral code? Leave them in the comments section, and the ones that make me laugh the most I'll put at the end of my next video. And as always, thank you for your time.